Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me commend Dawn Group for organizing one of the most powerful summit on China-Pakistan economic cooperation. You would have 2 very busy days. So what I thought I will do is to set the ball rolling, because I have very distinguished panelists and I don't want to take their thunder away. So I lay down some 4 or 5 points which will be further discussed and debated by my fellow panelists. First of all, let me try to come to the basics as to what the CPEC as it stands today, what does it entail? And what are the components and the phasing? Because there's a lot of confusion in that. We are now talking only of the early harvest projects, which are close to 23 to 24 billion, which are likely to be completed in the next 1 or 2 years. And the main emphasis of these early harvest projects are energy and electric power. Almost 10,000 megawatts will be added by 2019 by the execution of these early harvest projects. Then you have the short-term projects, which will spill over to the next 3 years, which will start the roads, infrastructure, further development and completion of the other energy projects, which will take it to the 18,000 megawatts. The third phase is the medium term, in which you will start industrial zones, which will be 9 of them in all the provinces, and the planning will be done during the next few years, but the actual execution will take place at that time. And then you have the long term, which will spill over beyond 2013. So let us try to focus at the moment on the early harvest projects, rather than mix the components which have not even been designed and planned, because that creates a lot of uncertainty. So where do we stand and what should we expect in the near future? The largest component, as I explained, is the energy projects. Out of the original commitment of $35 billion, of $45 billion to $50 billion, $35 billion are to be earmarked for energy projects, and there are 3 major chunks of this. Fuel substitution, that we were too much reliant on oil, furnace oil, and there will be substitution by solar, wind, coal, LNG, so your fuel mix will be changed. Second will be the generation capacity will be added to 18,000 megawatts, which will be almost double the existing capacity. And the third aspect is to increase the transmission capacity also from Matiari to Faisalabad and Matiari to Lahore to carry this whole thing. So what are the net benefits we should expect for the Pakistan economy? Because of the energy shortages, we had a decline in our exports during the last 5 years. If our exports had continued at the same rate as our historical past, in 2018-2019, we should have had $36 billion of exports, which means our trade deficit and the current account deficit would have been lower by $15 billion. That would have reduced our external borrowing requirements our current account deficit to GDP ratio, and it would not have created any pressure on our foreign exchange reserves. So the fact that we lost these $15 billion was mainly because of the energy shortages. If you look at the last 9 months, because the energy has now become available to the industrialists and to the exporters, we have 11% to 12% growth rate of our exports. So at this speed, and if we continue this pace, by 2022, our exports will be about $33 billion. So our capacity to repay these loans and also repatriate the profits will expand, and we will be able to pay back about $2.5 to $3 billion, which we have to be obliged to pay under the CPEC projects. These are numbers which the IMF, which is a completely neutral body, has come up with, that at its peak, we will be paying $2.5 to $3 billion. Finally, what are the risks to the economy? The first and the foremost risk, according to me, is that we lack coordination between the federal, provincial, and local governments. Everybody is going in their own direction, and we do not work in unison and for a common purpose. Our Chinese partners are extremely frustrated at the red tape and the long time it takes to get all the approvals before the project can be executed. They are quite used to a very rapid pace at which the projects are executed, but unfortunately, we are still following our own procedures and rules, and our institutional framework is not geared to keep up with the pace of the Chinese partners. So this is the first important risk, that we will not be able to complete the projects on time if we do not really address this question of coordination. The second, for industrial zones, we have to involve Pakistan's private sector. Rather than they sit around as a bystanders and criticize and moan about it, they should be involved very seriously in the design and the planning of the industrial zones. Because after all, they are going to be investing in these zones. And they should be assured that there is a level playing field for both the Chinese and the Pakistani businessmen as far as industrial zones are concerned. My third area of concern and risk is that we may have a lot of addition to our generation capacity, but our distribution system is extremely inefficient, and we have created 600 to 700 billion rupees of circular debt because of the non-recovery of bills and the electricity losses because of theft and distribution inefficiency. The more we add to the generation, the higher will become the circular debt, which will create a pressure on our public finances. So we have to take care very seriously of the problem of the distribution companies, and 4 of them, the Hyderabad, Sakkar, Quetta, and Peshawar, are contributing a very large chunk of this circular debt, and therefore either they should be restructured or they should be privatized. So these are the areas of concern and risks in order to get the benefits from the CPEC to the majority. I also want to end by saying that those proponents of the CPEC are making very exaggerated claims when they say it is a game changer. I think, let me put this in perspective for you. Pakistan's annual investment budget today is between $45 to $50 billion. CPEC investment on an average for the 15 years will be only $3 billion, which is 6% of our total investment. So you cannot claim that we are going to have a game changer just because of the 6% additional investment in this country. Similarly, those who are criticizing the CPEC that we will be burdened with an enormous debt, they are quite mistaken also. Because as our GDP increases and our exports increase, our capacity to repay these $2.5 to $3 billion will also increase, and it is quite in the manageable limits that we would be able to bear this burden. So both those who call themselves as the proponents of the CPEC are making exaggerated claims, and those who are poo-pieing and criticizing are also sadly mistaken. So this is the context in which I hope that my fellow panelists will take it further and benefit us with their considered views. Thank you very much.